Evelyn Hartman, Marion Voss, and Adrian were not just names on a guest list. They were players in a deadly game that no one saw coming. That night, behind the glittering walls of Evelyn's mansion, trust turned to betrayal. Secrets became weapons, and a single mistake would change all their lives forever. What really happened in those shadowed halls would shock the city, unravel friendships, and reveal a truth more twisted than anyone could imagine. Evelyn Hartman's mansion sat like a silent sentinel at the edge of the city, a sprawling estate, surrounded by towering hedges and iron gates that gleamed under the soft glow of streetlights. The mansion had long been the subject of whispered rumors among the city's elite, not because of its size or architecture, but because of the woman who lived there. Evelyn had built a reputation as one of the most influential art dealers in the country, her name associated with wealth, sophistication, and a charm that drew people in effortlessly. But behind the carefully polished exterior, her life was layered with secrets no one could imagine. That evening, the mansion was alive with the hum of a high-profile gala. The guests were a mix of socialites, collectors, and prominent business figures, all eager to catch a glimpse of the rare paintings and sculptures displayed in the grand halls. Glasses clinked, laughter echoed through the corridors, and the scent of expensive perfume mingled with the subtle aroma of freshly polished wood. Evelyn moved gracefully among the guests, her presence magnetic yet slightly distant, as though she were observing the crowd from a place no one else could see. Those who spoke with her noted her composed demeanor, never guessing the tension simmering beneath her poised exterior. As the night progressed, subtle signs began to emerge that something was amiss. A painting in the east wing appeared slightly askew. A vase on a marble table had a small crack that hadn't been there earlier, and the usually meticulous staff seemed unusually nervous. Evelyn noticed these small disturbances, but chose to ignore them, attributing them to the fatigue of hosting such an event. The guests, oblivious to these undercurrents, continued to mingle, their conversations light and superficial, unaware that the night would take a dark and irreversible turn. By the stroke of midnight, most guests had begun to leave, their laughter fading into the night as black cars disappeared down the long driveway. Evelyn stayed behind, wandering through the empty halls, her footsteps echoing against the polished floors. She paused in the study, a room lined with shelves of rare books and intricate sculptures. It had always been her sanctuary, a place where she could think without interruption, where she could retreat from the pressures of her public life. That night, however, the room felt different, almost oppressive, as if the walls themselves held their own secrets, silently watching her every move. Outside, the wind picked up, rustling the leaves and sending a chill through the sprawling gardens. The mansion's elaborate security system recorded every motion, but even the cameras failed to capture the subtle shift in the atmosphere. Evelyn sensed it before she could name a tough feeling of being watched, of something lurking just beyond her vision. She moved toward the large window overlooking the garden, peering into the darkness, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. Still, the unease persisted, a small knot of anxiety tightening in her chest. By morning, everything had changed. The mansion, once vibrant with life and conversation, was eerily silent. The staff found the study in disarray. A single chair knocked over, papers scattered across the floor. Most alarming of all, Evelyn Hartman was nowhere to be found. There were no signs of forced entry, no footprints outside the meticulously maintained gardens, nothing to suggest a break-in or struggle. The police were called, and within hours, the mansion was swarming with investigators, forensic teams, and media crews. Cameras flashed against the grand façade. Reporters whispered among themselves, speculating wildly about what could have happened to one of the city's most prominent figures. For Lucas Reed, the private investigator, who had once crossed paths with Evelyn on a previous case, the call came like a shock to the system. He had always known her as enigmatic, a person who kept her cards close, but he had never imagined her life could spiral into such mystery and danger. As he stood in the empty study, scanning the scattered papers and the single overturned chair, A chill ran down his spine. Something about the scene was familiar, almost as if Evelyn had anticipated this moment, leaving clues behind that only someone who truly knew her could decipher. Lucas knew, in that instant, that unraveling the truth of what had happened that night would take him down a path darker and more twisted than anything he had faced before. The city outside moved on, unaware of the secrets concealed within the mansion's walls. But for those who would uncover the truth, the night had only just begun. Shadows lingered, whispers persisted, and the question that haunted everyone remained. What really happened that night? As the investigation into Evelyn Hartman's disappearance unfolded, the surface of her life began to crack, revealing hidden fractures that no one had noticed before. Lucas Reed spent hours combing through the mansion, searching for anything that might shed light on the events of that night. Every room seemed to whisper secrets. Every object held a story carefully concealed. He discovered encrypted messages on Evelyn's personal devices, coded notes tucked inside books, and ledgers listing names that seemed ordinary but hinted at deals far from legal. It was clear that Evelyn's life was far more complex than anyone outside her inner circle could have imagined. Marion Voss, Evelyn's estranged sister, became a figure of immediate interest. The two had a history of rivalry, a tangled web of jealousy, resentment, and unspoken grudges that stretched back years. Marion had appeared sporadically in Evelyn's life, always at crucial moments, her motives impossible to read. Lucas learned that Marion had been involved in mysterious business ventures, some of which overlapped with Evelyn's gallery operations. Rumors suggested that she moved in circles connected to the city's underworld, though concrete evidence had always been elusive. As Lucas dug deeper, he realized that Marion's presence that night, though unconfirmed, could not be ignored. Adrian Cole, a man whose charm had once disarmed Evelyn and others in her circle, also came under scrutiny. Adrian had a reputation for manipulation, bending situations to his advantage, leaving others to clean up the consequences. Financial records hinted at his involvement in schemes that might have endangered Evelyn, though proving a direct connection was difficult. Lucas suspected Adrian had engineered circumstances to place Evelyn in a vulnerable position, though the exact nature of his intentions remained murky. Every clue seemed to suggest that Evelyn had been ensnared in a carefully planned web of betrayal, one that had been set into motion long before the night of her disappearance. Among the mansion's many rooms, Lucas discovered a hidden study beneath the main library. A small, almost imperceptible door led to a narrow staircase descending into darkness. The room at the bottom was small, lined with shelves containing journals, personal notes, and letters that had never been catalogued. The journals chronicled Evelyn's thoughts over the past year, revealing her growing suspicion that someone close to her intended to exploit her trust. In the margins of the entries were cryptic references to meetings, veiled threats, and coded warnings. It was as if Evelyn had anticipated danger, leaving behind a trail meant to guide someone she trusted to the truth. Lucas also uncovered a series of untraceable phone calls and messages, originating from numbers that no longer existed. These communications painted a picture of obsession, intimidation, and silent threats. The way the messages were written suggested that Evelyn knew she was being watched. Yet she had refused to confront her fear openly, preferring to gather evidence in secret. It became increasingly clear that the night of her disappearance had not been random. Every detail, the timing, the guests, the empty hallways, had been meticulously manipulated. The more Lucas investigated, the more he realized that Evelyn's life was a labyrinth of half-truths and concealed motives. The luxurious parties, the elegant dinners, the public image of sophistication, all were masks hiding conflicts that had long simmered beneath the surface. The mansion itself seemed to hold the memories of countless confrontations, whispered threats, and secret alliances. In piecing together the fragments of Evelyn's life, Lucas sensed a pattern emerging, one that pointed to betrayal, not from strangers, but from those she had allowed closest to her. Amid the unfolding mystery, the line between friend and foe blurred. Marion's elusive movements, Adrian's subtle manipulations, and the presence of other less obvious players hinted at a conspiracy larger than anyone could have anticipated. It was no longer simply a case of a missing woman. It was a study of human ambition, envy, and the dangerous consequences of secrets left unchecked. Lucas understood that the truth of what happened that night would not be revealed easily. Every new discovery seemed to raise more questions than answers, each revelation pulling him deeper into a shadowy world where appearances were deceiving and trust could be deadly. By the time he left the mansion that night, Lucas felt the weight of the mystery pressing down on him. Evelyn Hartman's life, once admired for its elegance and control, now seemed like a carefully constructed puzzle designed to obscure the darkness lurking at its core. And at the center of it all was a question that refused to be answered. Who among those closest to her had crossed the line, and what had they done on the night that changed everything? The investigation took a sharp and unexpected turn, as new evidence began to challenge everything Lucas Reed had thought he knew. Detective Isla Monroe, who had been quietly coordinating the official inquiry, uncovered inconsistencies that raised more questions than they answered. Security footage from the mansion had been partially erased. The timestamps on the remaining clips mismatched with eyewitness accounts, and even the most basic records of the night contradicted what guests claimed to remember. Every layer of testimony seemed unreliable, each detail pointing in multiple directions at once. The sense of clarity Lucas had once hoped for began to unravel, leaving him with only fragments of a truth that seemed to shift every time he looked closer. Meanwhile, Simon Caldwell, a journalist known for digging into stories no one else dared touch, entered the picture with a flurry of anonymous tips. He claimed to have information suggesting Adrian Cole had been involved in a series of illegal transactions linked to Evelyn's gallery. The tips painted a picture of a man who had manipulated events from behind the scenes, using charm and influence to mask his motives. Adrian had been seen frequently in areas tied to both Marion and Evelyn, yet no concrete evidence directly tied him to the mansion on the night in question. Despite this, the connections suggested a deliberate orchestration, a plan designed to implicate others while keeping his own hands clean. Lucas's attention returned to Marion Voss, whose elusive presence had become increasingly suspicious. A small discovery changed everything. A single fingerprint, left on an item in the study, previously overlooked, matched hers. This evidence suggested a confrontation had taken place within the mansion, but it offered no motive or explanation for what had happened afterward. The revelation shocked Lucas. He had always suspected Marion's involvement in the background, but seeing tangible proof placed her at the scene in a way that could not be ignored. Yet, even with this discovery, the full story remained frustratingly out of reach, hidden beneath layers of deception and misdirection. As Lucas pieced together the timeline, he found further evidence that complicated the narrative. Phone records revealed a series of untraceable calls, some originating from devices never registered with any service provider. Emails and messages had been deliberately deleted, leaving only fragments that hinted at secret meetings and unspoken threats. There was a clear pattern. Someone had been monitoring Evelyn, tracking her movements and manipulating her interactions. The question was no longer who wanted her gone, but why, and how far they were willing to go to conceal the truth. The hidden study beneath the library provided another clue. Among the journals and notes Evelyn had kept, Lucas found entries indicating she had anticipated betrayal. She had chronicled observations about Marion and Adrian, noting their behaviors, subtle lies, and the tension that had existed for months. Evelyn's handwriting, meticulous and precise, suggested a careful mind planning for contingencies, as though she expected a confrontation and had left a trail for someone she trusted to follow. Each entry revealed more about her intuition and the danger that had surrounded her, emphasizing that the night of her disappearance was not a random event, but the culmination of a slow, deliberate scheme. As the pieces fell into place, a new realization struck Lucas. The person orchestrating events that night might not have been the most obvious suspect. The intertwining of Adrian's manipulations, Marion's apparent involvement, and Evelyn's own secret strategies suggested a level of planning that extended beyond the confines of the mansion. The trail hinted at a third party, someone who had carefully manipulated both sisters and Adrian, creating a scenario where trust was weaponized and the line between victim and perpetrator blurred. The investigation had reached a critical juncture. Lucas understood that unraveling the truth would require seeing past appearances, decoding subtle signs, and interpreting hidden motives. Every discovery, every clue, only deepened the mystery. The mansion no longer seemed merely a backdrop for a disappearance. It had become a stage for a carefully orchestrated drama, where every participant had a role and every action had consequences. By the end of the day, Lucas sat surrounded by the evidence, the fragments of messages, the journals, and photographs, feeling the weight of the puzzle pressing on him. The story he had hoped to uncover was proving more complex and darker than he had imagined. The night that changed everything was not simply a night of chaos, was a carefully constructed sequence of events, with multiple players maneuvering in shadows, each with their own secrets, ambitions, and betrayals. Lucas knew one thing with certainty. Uncovering the truth would require confronting dangers hidden in plain sight, and the next revelation would shock everyone. The investigation into Evelyn Hartman's disappearance had reached a stage where the motives were becoming clearer. Yet the path to the truth remained tangled and treacherous. Lucas Reed spent long nights piecing together evidence, trying to connect the fragments left behind. What he uncovered painted a picture of ambition, jealousy, and desperation, so intricate that it was almost impossible to separate truth from manipulation. Evelyn's life, once admired for its elegance and control, was now revealed as a battlefield where personal ambition collided with greed and betrayal. Central to the emerging story was the discovery of a long-lost family heirloom, a piece of jewelry rumored to be worth millions, hidden away for decades. The heirloom had been the subject of whispered arguments between Evelyn and Marion, and Lucas realized it was the key to understanding the true motive behind that night. Records suggested that Marion had been obsessively searching for it, determined to claim it for herself. The journals Evelyn had kept in the hidden study revealed her growing suspicion of Marion's intentions. Every note hinted at tension escalating, plans being made, and confrontations being avoided until the right moment. It seemed that Evelyn had anticipated Marion's moves, preparing for a confrontation she may have feared, but also expected. Adrian Cole's involvement added a further layer of complexity. Financial records and fragments of communication suggested that he had been manipulating both sisters. Leveraging the family conflict for his personal gain, he had been seen frequently with Marion in the months leading up to the disappearance, though whether he acted out of loyalty, greed, or personal obsession remained unclear. Lucas began to see a pattern. Adrian had carefully orchestrated circumstances, positioning himself to benefit from Evelyn's vulnerability, while ensuring that suspicion could be deflected onto others. The web of manipulation was meticulous, as though someone had studied human behavior and exploited it to perfection. Lucas also revisited the journals Evelyn had left behind. She had meticulously recorded observations about both Marion and Adrian, detailing their behavior in cryptic entries. Phrases like "watch the shadow behind the smile" and "trust only the silent observer" indicated her growing paranoia, but also her strategic mind. Evelyn had documented interactions that hinted at threats and blackmail, carefully noting inconsistencies in stories and unexplained absences. These writings suggested that she had known her life was in danger and had prepared a trail of evidence, coded in a way that only someone with insight could follow. Lucas realized that Evelyn had been playing her own game, quietly turning the tables on those who sought to harm her, New evidence hinted at a third player, someone neither Lucas nor the police had initially suspected. Anonymous messages and patterns in communications pointed toward an orchestrator outside the immediate circle, someone who had quietly manipulated events, creating tension between Marion and Adrian. This shadow figure had ensured that blame could be shifted, allowing the conspiracy to unfold without leaving a trace of their own involvement. The existence of this unseen player complicated the narrative, and suggested that the events of that night had been carefully staged, a trap set with precision and patience. As Lucas reconstructed the timeline, he realized the sequence of events had been deliberate. Evelyn had discovered Marion's intent to claim the heirloom and had confronted her. Adrian, present at the wrong nor perhaps the right moment, intervened, escalating the situation beyond anyone's control. The struggle that followed, carefully concealed in the journals and notes, explained the overturned chair, the scattered papers, and the eerie silence that greeted the staff the next morning. What had initially appeared as a disappearance now hinted at a confrontation that had gone tragically wrong, yet had been manipulated to obscure who had truly crossed the line. The mansion, with its hidden passages, secret rooms, and carefully constructed facades, had been more than a home. It had been a stage for ambition and betrayal. Lucas understood that unraveling the full story required interpreting not just the physical evidence, but the human motives that had driven each player to act in secrecy. Greed, fear, and desire had collided in that single night, producing consequences far greater than anyone could have predicted. The truth was no longer simple. It was a tapestry woven from lies, obsessions, and hidden intentions. By the end of the day, Lucas felt both closer to the truth and more uncertain than ever. The events of that night had not been random. They had been a calculated convergence of hidden agendas. Every discovery brought him nearer to understanding the fatal chain of events. But it also revealed the deeper complexity of Evelyn Hartman's life. The stakes were higher than he had imagined, and one misstep could allow the shadows that haunted the mansion to remain hidden forever. The night's secrets were unraveling, but the final twist, the one that would reveal everything, was still waiting, concealed just beyond reach. The final pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place as Lucas Reed followed the trail left behind by Evelyn Hartman. The journals, cryptic messages, and hidden notes that had once seemed like scattered fragments now revealed a deliberate design. Evelyn had not vanished by accident. She had anticipated betrayal and had meticulously crafted a plan to expose the truth. Every clue, every coded warning, every detail in her study pointed toward a conclusion that only someone with insight could uncover. Lucas realized that Evelyn had orchestrated the events of that night, not merely to survive, but to ensure justice in a world where deceit had long gone unchecked. The journey led him far from the mansion, to a secluded cabin nestled in the outskirts of the city. The location was isolated, shielded by trees and distance from prying eyes. Yet every step of the path had been hinted at in Evelyn's notes. The cabin appeared abandoned, but subtle signs indicated that someone had recently been there. A faint footprint in the dust, a piece of paper with part of a journal entry pinned under a rock. Lucas's pulse quickened as he realized he was on the verge of uncovering the truth that had eluded both the authorities and the media. The night's events, long cloaked in mystery, were about to be revealed in their full complexity. Inside the cabin, the truth emerged with a clarity that was both chilling and tragic. Evelyn had anticipated Marion's obsessive search for the family heirloom. The journals described confrontations carefully avoided until the right moment, notes detailing how Marion might react, and contingency plans for each possible outcome. On the night of her disappearance, Evelyn had confronted Marion, hoping to negotiate and prevent further escalation. But Adrian Cole, who had manipulated the sisters for his own gain, had intervened, and the confrontation spiraled out of control. A struggle ensued, marked by panic, fear, and a desperate attempt to control the situation. The result was a fatal accident, a moment of chaos captured only in Evelyn's meticulous notes and the few remaining pieces of evidence. What shocked Lucas most was the realization that Evelyn had anticipated even this outcome. She had staged elements of the mansion, the scattered papers, the overturned chair, to conceal the truth from anyone who might investigate hastily. The sequence of events she left behind created confusion deliberately, ensuring that only someone patient and perceptive enough, someone like Lucas, could reconstruct what had actually happened. The journals revealed her final intention. The truth must be uncovered carefully, ensuring justice without implicating those who had been manipulated by Adrian's deceit. Evelyn had been the silent observer, guiding the investigation from beyond the scene, leaving clues designed to lead to understanding rather than condemnation. Detective Isla Monroe and Simon Caldwell, following Lucas's findings, confirmed the revelations. Each detail corroborated the narrative of a carefully orchestrated confrontation gone tragically wrong. Adrian's manipulations, Marion's obsession, and Evelyn's foresight were all part of a delicate and dangerous interplay that had reached its tragic climax on that fateful night. The investigation, once chaotic and contradictory, now revealed a story of ambition, deception, and survival. Evelyn's cunning had turned the night from an unsolvable disappearance into a blueprint for justice. In the end, the mansion was no longer just a location. It was a testament to human complexity, ambition, and secrecy. The tragedy of that night became a story not just of betrayal and loss, but of foresight and intelligence. Evelyn's life, once admired for its elegance and control, had concealed a resilience and strategic mind, capable of outmaneuvering those who sought to harm her. The heirloom, the journals, the secret passages, all were pieces of a puzzle that revealed the depth of her foresight. Lucas stood outside the cabin, feeling the weight of what had been uncovered. The city beyond remained unaware of the intricate drama that had played out in shadows and silence. But he understood the significance of the truth. Evelyn had left behind more than clues. She had left a story of human complexity, a lesson in trust, betrayal, and the lengths people go to protect themselves. The night that had once seemed inexplicable was now illuminated with a tragic clarity. The secrets of that night, hidden for so long, had finally been revealed, leaving a lingering awareness that even the most carefully hidden truths could be uncovered with patience, insight, and determination.